All right, guys, on the Fight Bananas podcast, UFC superstar Charles Rosa. How you doing, my man?
Man, I'm great. Just I got back from the gym, just made some dinner, so just finished eating, so just hanging out now, relaxing.
Absolutely. First of all, dinner. I always watch you on the IG. You're always making good food. Where's the Rosa restaurant? When is that coming out?
Man, maybe after my fighting career, basically, I went to culinary school after high school. I went to Johnson & Wales College, got a culinary arts degree and a degree in nutrition. So that's initially what I wanted to do. But after working I worked in the restaurants for, up until about a year ago, I was still working pretty much, part-time. I worked full-time, and then once I became pro and made the UFC, I was able to work part-time, But, yeah, man, it's always been a passion of mine, but, I just like fighting a little bit more, so I'm happy to be a fighter now.
Definitely. Hey, that's a good backup plan. Good backup plan in a couple years. But for one, let's just talk about that. You just said you came from the gym. Not a lot of gyms are open. This wild corona effect on the whole MMA. I've been talking to multiple fighters the last 2-3 days. How are you dealing with it? How is it? How are you kind of evolving with this pandemic?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm definitely taking it seriously. Obviously doing everything that they recommend. Washing my hands, not hanging out in big groups. Not going to restaurants. Actually, I think all the restaurants are closed now at this point. So going to the grocery store just once every couple of days, just loading up what I can get. Trying to stay out of contact. But as far as the training goes, I mean, it's my job, and right now I still have a job, and I'm still scheduled to fight May 2nd. So until I'm told otherwise, I have to keep training. The coaches have done a really good job. I've been using the same training partner every day for the last about 2 weeks now, and the same coach. So obviously I don't get the variety that I usually get of all the different guys, but I get the same one or two guys that I train with every day, and we're definitely keeping it in very simple, small groups, and I think they're taking it pretty seriously and doing a good job of it. But I'm still getting my work in because I still have a fight, so.
Right. I talked to Jacob Kilburn. He's down there, and he said the same thing. Like, the gym is different, but he loves it. It's a little bit more one-on-ones and two-on-twos, and it's just not that huge group. Usually, I've been down there a couple of times, and there's 70 guys running, 70 guys and girls. It's massive. So much talent there at ATT. But okay, you talked about it May 2nd, Oklahoma City. We wrote about it here on Fight Bananas, and it's just one of those fights that people in the media, the fans, they're super excited about it, man. You and Bryce Mitchell, just so much. Kind of for one, have you heard anything so far? It's going forward. It looks like Dana. I don't know if you just heard the news. UFC 249 is going down. Dana White says he's got the location. 99.9% it's happening. So you got to think May 2nd is going to happen as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking daily with my manager, Jason House. He's in contact with the UFC daily. I train at, one of the best gyms in the world, so I get, updates daily. And as of right now, it's on until I'm told otherwise, But, yeah, they're saying that April 18th is going to happen. There could be Ferguson fight. So, obviously, it's kind of cool that that's before mine, because if that goes down, I think it'll be a higher percent chance that my fight happens. But, like I said, man, I mean, I'm super excited about this fight against Bryce Mitchell. It's a fight I asked for. It's a fight for the fans especially, and man, it's gonna be awesome. I'm just hoping it goes down on May 2nd like it's scheduled to.
Right. And kind of my question is, do you know as a fighter who that's in the fight, or even, there seems like every fight, every card, there's a, the people's main event. And you guys, I think I coined it. You guys are the people's main event for this card. For one, as a fighter in that fight, do you realize it? Do you know it? Do you kind of feel that? And on each card, like, oh, I can't wait for this. Wow, this is not even the main event, not even like you said, but like that's the fight the fighters want to see. That's everything I've been hearing.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I'm a fight fan myself, honestly, and like that's one of the things. I mean, when I watch fighters, there's guys that I'm a fan of, and like, man, I like the kid's style. I think he's a super tough kid. He's, and stuff like that. I like he comes to fight. And, he reminds me, for me, like, I remember the fight that I was super excited about. One of the cards I was on when I fought Yair Rodriguez in Mexico City was Eddie Alvarez versus Gilbert Melendez. I remember just, like, being, like, even though I was fighting on the card and I fought right after their fight, I was, like, right before their fight, I was, like, super excited for that fight as a fight fan myself. So, I mean, I get it, man. I love fighting, and I love seeing the toughest guys go against each other. And, that's kind of why I asked for this fight. I knew that the fans want to see it. I mean, he's undefeated. He's 12-0, 3-0 in the UFC. He's coming off submission of the year, so he's one of the best guys in the world. And that's what I want to fight. I want to fight the best guys to show that I'm the best guy, and that's what this is all about, you know. So I'm
Yeah.
going for the kill for sure.
I agree with you. Both you guys have a ton of performances of the night, fight of the night, submission of the night, couple times. Your last submission up there in Boston was, unreal. So it's definitely a fans fight is super excited about. One thing you mentioned about, just in the featherweight division, I would love your, as a fight fan, the landscape. It looks like Volkanovski's going to fight Holloway, UFC 251, the rematch. But there is Yair, there is T City, Brian Ortega there. There's Zabit. There's so much talent in featherweight division. And you and Bryce, this is like one of those fights. This is that step up. Whoever wins this goes in probably in that top 10, top 8. It's a big time fight. How do you feel just the whole featherweight division as a whole?
Yeah, I think the featherweight division is definitely shining right now. There's tons of talent in there. I know where I belong. I've fought in, all my losses in the UFC have been the top 10 guys. And, they're all fights that I thought that I won or could have won or should have won. I mean, I don't make excuses, but when I fought Yair Rodriguez, and I think he's number 6 in the world right now, I mean, I lost a split decision to him in Mexico City. It's a fight I thought I won. You go back, watch the tape, tell me what you think. But I'd say more the fight fans thought that I probably won that fight. I feel like if it wasn't in Mexico City in his hometown, it's a fight should have walked away with. But, it's something I learned from. And, always getting better. And that was, 3 or 4 years ago. And now I'm, much better fighter, much more polished fighter. And that's kind of what I look at. I mean, all my losses in the UFC are fight of the night, bonuses. I have 3 fight of the night bonuses. And I just came off the biggest win of my career, first round performance bonus submission in Boston. So I'm pumped about that. And, man, this is the most polished and the best fighter I've ever been. And, I look at a guy like Bryce Mitchell. He's also a super tough guy, but I just think that it's kind of like when I first came in the UFC. My first UFC fight was against Dennis Seaver. He was the number 9 guy in the world that took it on 5 days notice. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story, but that's kind of, I was a little bit out of experience. I mean, he had more UFC fights than I had pro fights in general, so it was kind of crazy. I think he had like 16 UFC fights, and I was like 9-0 when I went in the UFC. And so, I mean, that's part of it too. So I think that's one thing I'm bringing to the table that he's lacking a little bit is the level of competition, the guys he's fought. I got fights against, Dennis Seaver, Shane Burgos, Yair Rodriguez, so, Kyle Bochniak, these guys, so, I've been in there with the best of the best, and, I think he's yet to see the best of the best, and that's what he's running into May 2nd.
Right. It's a great point. I love that point. I kind of hit on that a little bit. Just your veteranship. You've been in there a lot longer than him. And I like you kind of been through a lot, injuries inside the octagon, outside the octagon. It's just, I feel like you're primed this year, with that win, 2020, 2-3 wins in a row. I think you're really primed for a nice run. You said something there that was really interesting that you said about maybe, about the Mexico City fight, maybe not taking it, kind of learning the lesson. Is that something that I've never thought about that really is, hey, your manager calls you and says, hey, we got to fight. I'm just throwing out someone, GSP, and it's in Canada. It's like one of those like spots, of course, like a Shane O'Malley in Dublin, like one of those things. Is that something that you think about twice now because you kind of went through it with the Yair and you being a little bit of a veteran now?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because, like I said, all my losses have come in like at the away games basically, and they're all fights that I feel like I got robbed on. I mean, the Mexico City fight was probably the biggest one, but even when I fought Shane Burgos, I mean, I was up 2-0 on him. There was about 2 minutes left in the fight, and the ref kind of jumped in prematurely. He hit me with a good shot, but I was on my feet. And like rarely do you see a UFC fight get stopped when 2 guys are still standing. And it kind of, I was like, I could see if I was on the ground and I was eating shots and I just like, oh, I wasn't out, but like I was on my feet swinging back and the ref jumped in. Like, and you see fights like guys like Frankie Edgar, and he's had like 10. That's how he became a world champion. You know what I'm saying? It's fighting back, swinging back, and the ref not jumping in. So that was also one in New York. And even though New York is still in the U.S., like I'm a Boston guy, so that's probably more foreign territory than anything. Like Boston versus New York, you guys know the rivalry.
Right.
And then against Dennis Seaver, I fought him in Europe, and he was the European champion. He's probably the best fighter from Europe at the time. So when I fought him, that was even before Conor came around. So, I mean, I think that it's definitely something I consider and think about, and, it's something I try to avoid. But, I'm undefeated in Boston. I got 3 wins in Boston. So, I never lost a home game in my whole fight career as a professional. I think I'm 9-0 in New England. So, I definitely like the home games, but if I don't mind being in hostile territory. I've always performed.
No, that's awesome, man. Charles Rosa. We'll get you in a long-term kind of interview or just more of a Q&A later on, maybe in a couple weeks, maybe right before the fight, hopefully.
Cool.
One last thing. I don't know if you kind of remember this. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Around a year and a half ago, Dean Tool Promotions show, Pensacola, Supreme Patty, you and Dustin Lampros.
Yeah.
What a great weekend. I was there. I was doing the media stuff for her, doing some podcast stuff. Masvidal and Yoel was there. And do you remember we were in the Island Fights office and Supreme Patty was getting warmed up, and afterwards you did like a fake interview with them, and I have it on video. I got
yeah.
at my home, got that on video. So just some cool stuff. How that weekend was just one of those great weekends. You look back at it now. Even Phil Rowe was there. He wasn't in the UFC now. Now he's the UFC's a budding superstar. Biggie Rhodes, LFA champion. So much talent. Like you said, yourself was there, and Dustin was there. Maz, Yoel, Showtime Pettis. So, do you remember that weekend, and what was one of the highlights that you took from it?
Yeah, definitely, man. That was an amazing weekend. Like you said, it's crazy because, like, you go to all these little shows and then, sometimes superstars emerge from them. I mean, I think George ended up getting that crazy knockout, like, right after that and blew up like crazy.
Right.
And, you know what I'm saying?
2
So,
wins.
like, it's definitely cool. But, I mean, I had a great time. The experience was amazing, being able to, get the publicity from Patty. I mean, just to see him go through it, I really earned a lot of respect for the kid. I mean, it's a tough sport. A lot of people talk about getting in the ring and fighting and doing it, but for him to actually do it, as much as people think it's a joke and he's a joke or what he does, he actually went in there and he fought a real fight. So the kid earned my respect that night, and I think he earned some people's respect, and he fought his ass off. So that was the highlight for me, is going out there and seeing him perform and, seeing his hard work and going there and putting on a show for the fans. So it was a cool weekend.
Absolutely, my man. Hey, Charles, man, thank you so much for giving your time. A lot going on in the world right now. May 2nd, we cannot wait. We hope that fight happens. If it happens, maybe we'll talk to you in Oklahoma City, or we talk to you the week before. Man, appreciate your time, Charles. Thank you. Have a great night, brother.
I appreciate it, brother, man. Talk to you soon.
All right, brother. Bye.
Later.